Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to Proper Madness, formerly Beautifully Broken. My name is Sabby, and I give a unique perspective on mental health by providing tools, guidance, and knowledge on how we can better understand ourselves, as well as our past and present experiences, and in doing so, we can help heal our mental health. I get to speak with a variety of individuals from around the world as they share their stories from their journey through their mental wellness so that it helps others stand strong and use their voice. Welcome back, everyone, to Proper Madness. Today I have Connor with me, and his musical name is Shammy. And I'll let him introduce himself and explain what he's about and what he does.
Hi, I'm a musician, producer, and engineer. I work out of a studio in Newport Beach called Gold Pacific Studios. And my background, I would say, is I started playing piano when I was 4 years old. I'm very fidgety right now because I'm nervous. But I started playing piano when I was 4 years old, and my siblings started around the same time. I loved it in the beginning and just was so unbelievably just enamored that you can make things like that by just pushing like keys. It just was unbelievable to me that you were able to play things that existed hundreds of years before you in real time in front of you. So that was incredibly fascinating. Obviously, I'm not doing anything fancy at 4, just like chopsticks and random little things. But I would say that sparked the rest of my life, really, like my journey in music. I quit piano lessons when I was 12 years old. I started getting lots of anxiety because I did group lessons at like it sounds super fancy, like a conservatory thing, like an after school thing. It wasn't that fancy, but it was like group classes with a bunch of incredibly talented kids. And I was, grew up comparing myself to them, being like, I'm not a good pianist. I'm not a good pianist. I don't know what I'm doing. I can barely read notes. And these people are like sight reading incredible pieces. So I started getting very discouraged around when I was like 12. And so I quit piano lessons and decided to just keep playing and not keep writing, but I decided to start writing little tiny piano pieces every now and then, and started writing lyrics and started like dissecting music a little bit more. I'd say the first time I started recording, my buddy got Logic X, which is a digital audio workstation, meaning like you can record through it. So I started recording with my buddies when I was about 13 or 14 years old. And that just opened up all sorts of new possibilities with music, because it wasn't just like you have to be in a band and you gotta start touring and do all this stuff, but there was so much of the magic behind the music that I was mostly fascinated about. So yeah, I still use Logic for all my recordings now, except some of the stuff for podcasts and things at the studio. I use Pro Tools, but yeah, I started out wanting to produce at that age. I'm 14 and started producing little tiny EPs for myself to release. And over time, because there's so many different avenues when you or there's so many different positions and jobs within the creation of an album or a song. There's a mixer, there's an engineer, there's a producer, there's all the musicians that play everything. There's so many moving parts, and I kind of decided that I wanted to figure out how to do those moving parts, because I was not financially able to hire mixing engineers and mastering and producer. So I started doing it all on my own. I'd say around 18, I
Oh,
started like getting
wow.
into the engineering side of stuff.
That's really cool.
Um, yeah, and I just like I hated it. I hated it so much in the beginning
Why did you hate it?
because it's so technical, and I
Oh,
was more like because even when I was taking piano lessons, I could sight read very slowly. Like
mm,
I was able to do it, but I couldn't do it that quickly. And so for me, the idea of something that like you have to technically be able to do this, so you need to get those skills beforehand. So it's just a lot of the time and effort that goes into learning those things, and you can't just like watch a course and understand it. You
yeah.
need to practice it, and you need to put tons and tons of hours and thought into like the creations that you're making, or like the sound that you want to get, or understanding the frequency spectrum and where things lie in it, like where you can hear a guitar and be like, oh, that's peaking at like 350 hertz.
Mm,
Little things like that, that it's just ear training and getting used to.
yeah.
So that's the road that I'm currently still on.
That's so
It's
interesting. I've never met anyone who does like the engineering side of
really
music. No,
okay.
just like producers and singer-songwriters, but that's just so interesting and did you always like the technical side of it?
Not the technical side of that, but I always loved the like I grew up building connects
Oh,
and
cool.
loved the creation side of that like
Mhm.
there's a set thing that you're supposed to do, follow the instructions. But once you build that and you follow the instructions, you can take it apart and try a new way.
Mm,
Like once you understand how something works, then you can break the rules. It
mm.
kind of felt similar with engineering. It's like once you know what you can do with sound, you just have that much more of an understanding of what you can get out of that,
That's
like
I
how to
like that,
shape
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Do you apply that sort of idea and breaking the rules to your own music?
Uh, Definitely. I, I haven't released anything probably since like 20, like personally, I haven't since 2018, I think is
Mhm.
when my EP album thing I released. Recorded it in my grandparents' back house. I was living with them for a few years, and
That's
they
cool.
had a little like a playhouse that we used to play in as kids, and I made it a makeshift studio and did that album. But I'd say that I definitely have incorporated that aspect into my music because it's the way that I create now is less about pleasing other people, and it's more about kind of it is a form of therapy for me,
Mm,
and always has been. I mean, it wasn't always the most healthy form of therapy for me, because it was the only thing that I
mhm.
had for a long time, and so I think that makes good art, but it also affects you outside of that. Um, but yeah, I definitely try to take everything that I've learned from mixing and engineering. And the owner of the studio that I not worked at, he's incredibly talented as an engineer and a mixer, and I like have just learned light years of information from him just in the past 2 years that I've been working there. And so all of those things I have been like incorporating into my productions for other people. But when it comes to my music, I haven't really actually tracked. I write and I'll like voice memo songs.
Mhm.
But when I'm writing songs, I'm usually trying to go with the weirdest combination of chords or however many keys I can run through while still sounding cohesive. But it's like I don't really show people the songs. I just do it because I'm like, it's nice to know that I can, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I can take those ideas, and if I want to release something at some point or show somebody that I feel like it would mean something, to them,
Mhm.
then I definitely will. But it helps a lot with everything else around
Yeah.
my yeah, around my own
Cool.
productions.
Well, we can like just dive into the mental health part of it.
Sure, yeah.
I'll just like push you in. So you said that it was a form of therapy for you. Can I ask what exactly, like, what was going on with you and why that was a form of therapy?
um I would say that I felt very different than the rest of my family growing up. I mean, I feel like a lot of us do, that we feel like we're, just not, we don't fit in the same mold as other
Mm.
people. And I felt that from a really young age. And that I feel intensely, I feel strongly. I'm like a very passionate person, and that can be all ranges of emotions. And when I was younger, I really didn't have any avenue to actually express that or understand that until I found music. And then I was able to express it, but I still wasn't able to understand it. And I think that was a big turning point within the past 5, 7 years, something like
Mm.
that, where it became more about doing something about it and acknowledging how you respond to things and being aware and being, present. It's not easy to always do, but
No.
yeah. But I would say that the first time I was anxious was piano lessons. That
Mm.
was like, I think about it now, and it it like takes me back completely to where I'll just like, I can visually place where I was in my mind, like the first time I let somebody know how I felt at piano lessons, or like before that, the pressure of it. And yeah, it just was a very, I don't know, defining moment, because it showed me that I wasn't the only person that felt that way.
Mm.
I was like, other people felt that way through different situations, and that is something that could be involved in your life, and
Yeah.
that was, I'd say, shocking to an extent, where you're like, oh, I'm gonna feel this for who knows how long,
Yeah.
um it's terrifying. But I think that uh the lack of having tools or understanding of why I felt that way was probably the biggest reason why, like, not too much had changed.
Mm.
And I'd been medicated for a while, off and on, several different medications, and didn't really have positive experiences,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Actually, was recently prescribed something that hopefully will be a little bit stronger, or not stronger,
Yeah.
but like a little bit more capable of maintaining and not having, negative side effects. I think the side effects were what
Mm.
pushed me away from that for a good while.
Yeah, I totally get that. I was on medication for anxiety too. I found out that my anxiety fueled my depression. It was instead of like the opposite.
Yeah,
But yeah, those side effects can suck because you just want to feel better, feel like yourself.
yeah,
But then you're hit with all these other side effects, and it can just be a pain, to be honest. So
yeah, and it can
um
make you more anxious too.
yeah, a
You
hundred
start
percent.
seeing your body behave in different ways than it usually does. Like, what's going on with me?
Oh, I totally you yes, I understand. Um, what exactly do you think is like the root of your anxiety? Is it something that like are you triggered by it, or is it just kind of is some or oh my God, does something trigger your anxiety, or is it just something that's there?
Honestly, for me, I think it's something that's just there, and the more that I'm aware of it, the more I'm able to kind of not brush it off, but like not let it affect me in the same
Mm.
way. But obviously, I would say that there are also aspects that aren't just there, and they are situational. I know that I can get very anxious with my family, with family stuff. That can always be, triggering for people.
Yeah.
Um, I love my family also. They've been extremely supportive and loving. We're just very different, so
Yeah.
that can be the hard part to cope with, and can be anxiety inducing. But I would say uh, the general existence of my anxiety isn't one specific thing. I just can be a very anxious person.
Yeah. that makes
worrying and
sense.
stressing about things that are completely out of my control.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of us, who struggle with anxiety, specifically. Like a really small situation to a normal person who doesn't have anxiety, they just look at you and be like, "No, it's not a big deal. Just let it go." And you're like, "What? What do you
I
mean?"
can't. Yeah.
You're like, "No, you don't understand."
I want people to fall asleep.
Yeah, does your mind just kind of, for me, this is what it is when I have anxiety. My mind will just get a little paranoid and think of every possible
Hmm.
scenario. Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not fun.
It's confusing for my wife. We met in Russia about 4 or 5 years ago. Got married 3 years ago, but like she's helped a lot with my anxiety, and other things are a little bit more triggering. But the way that she like sees it is completely different, because
Mm,
Russia's like state for mental health is completely different in the way that we see it here.
yeah.
But I'll start kind of like snowballing down the rabbit hole of anxiety, and she was like,
Hmm.
"What are you doing? Why are you freaking out? There's literally you can't do anything about that. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it." Like, and sometimes that I'm like, okay, snowball more. Or I'm like, no, but you don't get it. Like it's bigger than that. And then other
Yeah.
times it really will make all the difference, and it will give me that like understanding of, this isn't, like, the feeling that you have isn't permanent. The
Mhm.
situation isn't permanent. And even if it is, like, is there anything you can do about it? No. Then, like, do what you can to just breathe,
Mm.
get through it, try to acknowledge it. And that's about all that you can do.
Yeah.
Me personally, at least.
Well, I like that you said to acknowledge it, because I feel like our initial instinct, if we're feeling some sort of uncomfortable emotion like anxiety, we just kind of want to run from it and not feel it. Whereas it's better, in my opinion, to acknowledge it and be like, okay, we're feeling anxious. This sucks.
Yeah.
And then just like work through it. Are there any other ways that you work through your anxiety specifically that have helped you?
Um, just for me, for years, it had just been playing piano, not
Mm.
for any other purpose than just to play. Um, Playing cover songs, or just noodling, playing around, trying different weird chord combinations or something.
Yeah.
That has always been my biggest, like, stress reliever, or like, way to get things off my chest, even if there aren't words. It's like
Yeah.
the feelings that you can play say everything that you are feeling. But outside of that, I love, I mean, Josh Dell. I love
Yeah.
playing games with my buddies. I'm so sad that he just moved to Nashville.
Oh my God. I know. I at least got to see him before he left. And
Yeah.
then I wanted to go see him again before he left. Like, it was just so God. But Nashville's a really
More
cool
reason to go to
place.
Nashville.
Oh, I have so many friends now in Nashville.
Same. Or like, me and V are like, should we consider Nashville? Maybe that's a possibility. It's
Oh
a
my God. Then I'll
beautiful
have
area.
another friend in Nashville
Yeah,
and I'll be
there we
like, oh
go.
my God, I just gotta go.
But yeah, I'm gonna miss him. But we would play music together a bunch, and just I'd say making sure that you have time for the things, for some things that you enjoy. Because I
Mhm.
feel like we get so caught up in, like, as musicians, get so caught up in either our work as a musician, or in making sure that other people's things are taken care of before we are.
Mhm.
um and so that I would say that just making sure that you're taken care of, that you're doing things for yourself, mentally and physically. I struggle with the physically part because I hate working out, but I feel like it always does help me, to an extent. Not that it solves all problems, but being physically active, uh, less for my anxiety and more from the depression side.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, and
Is
just feeling worth something, like understanding your worth and understanding your value, understanding that. Uh, I mean, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a massive star and influence the world and travel and tour, and do all this grandiose stuff that is world changing. And, when you get older and you realize that that's like, there are very few and far, like the people are very few and far in between that
Mhm.
are world changing, but that doesn't mean that you can't do amazing things that affect your world.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I would say invest in the people around you, invest and care for the people around you. Um, Another thing is like mentoring or tutoring within music. I think that's super important because I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am in my profession, in my abilities, if it weren't for people, 10, 15 years older than me, allowing me to hang out and just stand by them and like watch what they're doing and have them teach me what all the knobs do and everything.
Yeah.
If I didn't have those people, if I didn't have people around me about like talking to me about performing on stage and delivering things passionately in order to
Mm.
like actually uh, feel the emotion of the song, I wouldn't have anything really. So I would say that giving that back is extremely important, in order to just kind of keep that flow going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that
and
makes
it's freeing for yourself too. Like it always does feel nice to do something good for other people.
yeah, and it fuels your self-love and worth and validation of your own self and what you're capable of, especially when mentally you can struggle with coming up with those on your own otherwise.
Definitely.
So yeah, completely
Yeah, it's like a
makes
freebie.
sense. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, please tell me more about yourself.
Myself, what do I do?
Yes.
The music things? Well, I
Yes,
sing. I,
please.
I used to sing when I was young. Yeah, I just was very shy. I sang opera. I was like vocally trained,
Oh,
classical sing, like everything. I even did heritage wise. My family is from India, but my parents were born and raised in Canada and London, so like they're very westernized. But they always wanted me to like hold on to my culture, so I learned like the classically trained Indian, like how to do that. Yeah,
that's
it was
unbelievable. Oh my
I
gosh.
I'm just so shy. Like I have all these, it's funny, like for a really long time. The reason why I called this series the lyrics of the mind, because I used to write song lyrics, and then it turned into poetry. And I just didn't have the confidence to be like, I don't know how to, like, can't play any instruments. I can just sing. I used to be able to, like, actually, you know what? No, I used to play the drums when I was little, but I do it from auditory. I can't read notes or anything. I just
Like
hear it.
that's a whole other
Yeah.
thing. Like looking at the grabs of
So I don't know how. Like, I failed miserably at piano as a child. Like, my piano teacher hated me because he'd give me
oh my
homework
gosh.
and then I wouldn't do it but because I just get discouraged. So I'd show up to my piano lessons and I just make shit up. I would just do whatever.
The
And he'd
teacher's
look
like, that's great, but
100%. And my parents were always like, "Oh, you should do the piano recital," thinking I've been practicing what,
oh
like,
my gosh.
what I'm being taught. Low key, not at all. I just was winging it. And I remember doing a recital as a kid, and I just had like such a like fuck it mentality, and I just didn't care that I showed up to the recital. There's like hundreds of people. I'm not
Oh my
reading
gosh.
whatever the hell is here. And they're like, "What song are you playing?" And I just made up a name, and I sat down and played whatever I wanted. Didn't know if it sounded good or not. I just did it. And and after, I was fully expecting everyone to be like, what the fuck just happened? No, somehow I did something so out of the box. People started clapping, and I was like,
Oh
that
my
was it. I just
gosh.
left.
That's definitely a mic drop moment where you're like, all right, this is as
Uh,
good as it gets.
it reminds me of one of those, like artists, how they just do something really random. They're not following anything. They're like, this could be good or bad. I don't know, because I have no idea what I'm doing. And they just put like a splash on a page and it sells like millions of dollars. That's
Yep.
what that moment felt like. I was like, I've literally just sat here and played what I wanted, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Art is interpretable. There we go.
But yeah, music's what what did you say?
It just made me think of the H. John Benjamin. I was just talking about this yesterday, which is funny. H. John Benjamin's like a comedian. He's the voice actor for Archer and Bob's
Oh
Burgers,
yeah.
or Bob from Bob's Burgers. And he decided to do a jazz album, and he doesn't know how to play piano at all.
Oh my God.
It's the funniest thing. So you have like someone on sax doing a solo, like the whole band is phenomenal, and then like it'll break, and it'll be his jazz piano time, and
Oh
he'll
my
just
God.
like kind of stab and try to do it like in time. Sometimes it works out perfectly, and other times it's like, that there would be people that are like, this is brilliant, like how did they think to use a C
Oh my
sharp minor,
God.
flat 5, flat 4, flat 3, flat 2, flat 1. Wow. It's like
That
that's
sounds
different.
like no, but yeah,
It's classic.
it's interesting how some artists do that, right? They just don't know what they're doing, but they just try.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I'm an artist by any means. I was just a child
Sure.
that just didn't care. I was like,
It's the coolest story.
I've never told
Uh,
anyone that story
oh my
actually. I
God, I
swear
love
to God.
that.
Um, but yeah, I so music to me is very important. It's how I would emote and feel my emotions. Like I went through a very heavy goth punk phase as a child. Never really left. Um, I love Deftones. I just did a podcast with someone who also is like in that genre of like kind of I don't know if you could call it metal. I don't know what genre Deftones would fit into. I'd say just more like heavier rock. Um, but yeah, I used to love listening to music as an escape. And so when I started my platform, I was like, okay, I want to interview musicians because for me, I like listening to music as a kid when like things were crazy in my house. Like I just would shut the door, turn my music on, blast it up. Very teen angsty thing. But yeah, I grew up in a very chaotic household, unfortunately, and so for me, music was just like my escape. I was just like, no, when I go to another world, I'd like do these. It'd be when I don't know if you this is so random, but as a kid, like I'd put my hands over my eyes and it'd like make these like little
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. I would do that. I'd like it sounds so sad, but I would sit and like put my hands over my eyes and kind of like just watch these colors as I was listening to music. And that was like my way of emoting creatively in a strange way. So
That's
yeah.
like super weird. I had like when I was younger, I would do the exact same thing.
Stop,
I've
really?
never ever mentioned that, even
Me
like,
neither.
but
I was
yeah,
like,
like, oh my gosh, I used to just do this for ages. And it's
yeah.
like, and then the visualizer for iTunes came out. I'm like, oh, perfect. I
Yeah.
don't need to, I can just sit in front of it and
That's
listen to my
exactly
albums and stare at it. Oh my
yeah, that's
gosh.
exactly what I did.
Wild.
I was like, oh, but yeah, that's me.
Uh,
I love to sing, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I know I can sing, which is that's a plus, but it's in my car mostly and in the shower. Um, But someone told me the other day that while I was working out, they heard me singing, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh no!" I'm like,
That
"Oh
moment of
no, no, no,
panic.
no!"
Oh
They're
my
like, "Yeah,
gosh.
I walked into like the gym I go to is like little studios." They're like, "Yeah, I walked into the studio and I heard you singing, like just singing as you were like in between sets." And I stopped. I was like, "Oh no, what was I singing? I want to know what I was singing because it depends."
Oh my gosh.
They're like, "Yeah, you have a good voice." I was like, "Oh, thanks."
You're like too uncomfortable to accept the compliment.
Yes. Uh, that's 100% what happened. So yeah.
Gosh, amazing. I mean, I definitely can completely relate to that. Like, my house wasn't chaotic
Mm.
growing up, but I definitely saw like listening to albums and hearing the way that they felt. That sounds so stupid, but
No, it
like
makes
it,
sense.
like every, especially what I consider like some of the best albums, they're incredibly cohesive. They have similar ideas that link everything together in a similar sound. And there's something that like you just close your eyes and you feel physically in a different place. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, if for me, it was like, I don't want to be here right now. I
Mm.
would rather be somewhere else. And closing my eyes and listening to music, I got to be somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, 100%. It's that escape um, from whatever's going on. I, when I wake up in the morning, I always like say what I'm grateful for. And lately, it's just been
Right.
like I'm grateful to hear music and appreciate it the way that I do. I learned that there are some people who I didn't know that this was a thing, but some people who genuinely just don't see music as that deeper um medium emotionally. They just listen to like listen, and it blew my mind. I was like, what? Like there are people who don't appreciate music for like everything that it is, like the art. It's like art, you know?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a cousin that's very much. I mean, he's proud about it. It's not like a strange
Yeah.
thing, but he's just like, I don't really like music. I'm not a big fan. Like, I'll listen to it, but I just don't really, care for it.
Wow,
And
that's
I'm like,
crazy to me.
that's my life. Like, that's everything. I'm like, I don't know what I would do without it, really. Like, even if I
Yeah.
wasn't working within the industry, I'd still be listening to music nonstop all the time.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know what I'd do without it.
Well, I listened to like all of the musics. Okay, I listened to all of them, and I'm very curious about some of them. So if you want to like,
Ooh,
yeah, okay, but yeah, I listened to the songs that you like the vocals you gave for Cyrus's work compared to your own, and the it's just like so different. Similar but different. How does it feel singing someone else's lyrics? Because I can imagine like how can you connect with that, you know what I mean, from an emotional spot? I've always
um,
been curious about that.
it depends. Like, because there have been plenty of things that I've sang on where I'm like, I'm not emotionally attached to this. I'm not,
Yeah.
there's nothing about this that I think is like relatable to me,
Mm.
or like some of the lyrics can be cheesy sometimes. Like, I I have consistent enough work that I don't have to do gigs like that too much anymore,
Mhm.
which is great. So I'm able to like pick the stuff that I like am passionate about, or that I see as like me being able to do justice for.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's at least with Cyrus's stuff, it didn't feel at all like foreign. He explained kind of the foundation behind the songs. He explained what he wanted emotionally from the song. He explained
Mm.
where the headspace is of the person that's singing it. So
Yeah.
we had a lot of discussions of like where we wanted the vocals to go and where we wanted the harmonies to go, um, and how the vocal inflection was super important for specific words and the timing
Mm.
of everything in order for there to be some syncopation and other little producer tricks like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would say that working with him was just a breeze. That was another thing. I was in the back house, the little playhouse. We call it Playhouse Studios. But that's where, yeah, I recorded those vocals back in the day. They were recorded probably a year, maybe almost 2 years before it was released. There was so much
Really?
time put into the recording, not vocally. I mean, like
Mhm.
we spent a month or two just sending stuff back and forth. But he tracked all the strings at Air Studios and the brass in Turkey or something.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. So he was all over the place because he wanted specific groups to
Sounds.
perform. Yeah, he
Yeah.
wanted the specific sounds of the rooms and things like that. So
That's
um,
cool. That's really
yeah,
cool. Um, the songs that you have written, I'm very curious, because I'm a lyric person. So I listened to the lyrics behind some of the songs. For You, I really liked that one. Can I know the like what the all the things? I
yeah,
can't sing
absolutely.
English. My
um,
pre-workout's like slowly wearing off, and I'm like,
oh
ah.
my gosh, that feeling. I get that. That song I wrote when I first because my wife and I met about 5 years ago, and we reconnected maybe four. Um, and after like we spent, it was crazy. We spent probably 4 to sometimes 10 hours a day having conversations over the
Wow.
phone, back and forth, and sleeping like 4 hours a night, 3 or 4 hours a night, just so that we could have time because we were on the other sides of the world. Um, and so yeah, I wrote this song just to kind of let her know that I was very serious about her.
Mm.
That I really hadn't wanted to be like not selfless, but I really hadn't wanted to be like to change or intentionally do something to like better myself or
Mm.
change my behavior in order to um, like make someone feel a little bit more comfortable. And so I
Yeah.
guess that song was kind of like I'll try anything, for you. I'm down to work hard on this relationship. I know it's not going to be easy. I know I'm not an easy person to live with or
Mhm.
love. So not that I'm not deserving of love or anything,
Yeah.
but when you're anxious, when I'm anxious, at least I can be very difficult to be around sometimes. So it's kind of addressing those things, in
Mm.
that song that, uh, there's certain ways that I feel, certain things that I struggle with or have a difficulty with, and that it's
Yeah.
something that I'm willing to work on and want to work on in order to make our relationship work.
It's such a beautiful song. Like I listened to it,
Thank you.
yeah, I listened to it in my car. And even just the acoustics of that song, like your work, I would say, I don't know if you're going to be offended or not offended by this. It depends on the person. It reminds me, gave me some like Beatle vibes, and then
Love it.
A little bit of Elton John. I was like,
Love
oh,
it.
I was like, what is this? I just love like your voice has just so much warmth
Thank you.
in it. Yeah, it's like God, I'm a writer. I feel like I should come up with like better ways to explain things. I don't know. It's like a warm hug made of sunshine.
Oh my
Don't know.
gosh. Wow. Thank
That's
you.
how
That's
you're
one
welcome.
of the greatest compliments I think I've gotten about my music.
Well, I am a brutally honest human being, so but
Love
yeah,
that.
I didn't I guess I didn't expect that sort of sound and vibe, because it's something I haven't heard from modern day artists, I would say. So it's just very different, very unique in like the
Thank
best
you.
way possible. Yeah.
I'm like
Um,
blushing.
um, what what like inspired you to come up with that sort of sound for that album?
Um, I mean, part of it was necessity because my abilities as an engineer and like a mixer were definitely not up to par. So part of it was coincidence.
Mm,
Um, and then I would say that the other side was I grew up listening to like Phil Collins and James Taylor and I loved the Beatles and anything that had um, good storytelling or beautiful lyrics or
mm,
that old kind of saturated feeling in the music to where their
yeah.
voice sounds so close, but it's not like rubbing your ears. You don't hear that high kind of crispiness. You just have the
Yes.
warmth and warmness of like the tube sound of everything running through tubes or tape. So I went overboard on that sound and was trying to make everything sound as old school as possible. Um, yeah, yeah, I'd say that it was half and half, half
Mm.
intentional, half just by accident.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Like it's
Thank
just
you.
different, which is good.
I have new songs that I've
Yeah.
written
Would you
that
want to talk
are
about? Would you like to talk about some of that stuff, or you don't have to say what it
yeah,
is yet? Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's I'm not like keeping it
Oh, I
secret or
don't know. I
anything.
don't.
It's yeah.
I like to be
It's
conservative because you
no,
never
that's
know.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. No, I'd say that a lot of the stuff in my new songs is a lot more uh, social and political and kind of uh, introspective in a way, kind of like just looking at what makes people think or behave or do the things that we do. I have a song called um, "Shape," which is kind of it's a very existentialist kind of not in a negative way, but it's like, what
Yeah.
are we? Where are we? The first few lines are like, how do I get this shape? How do I get this shape to move me, like my body?
Mm.
Um, Tell it how to send a message through me. But who is this me? Author of thought or the messenger? Um, I forget some of the other lyrics, but it's kind of the idea of like, am I making my decisions
Mm.
or are they just happening?
Yeah.
That kind of conundrum. And I know that with dissociating, it can sometimes feel like you're not making the decisions, and you're not
100%.
fully active in your own life. So yeah, I'd say that I kind of touch on things like that, or um, I'm kind of at the age where the existentialism is just, it used to be terrifying, but now I'm just like, am coming to terms with certain things, or like the
Mm.
idea that no, you'll never know, like the things that you desire to know about life in general, they're unknowable
Yeah.
currently, who knows where we'll be in 100,000 years or whatever. But yeah, I'd say that the big theme right now is kind of just introspective onto like introspection into what makes us who we are, or like what makes me who I am,
Mm.
and that includes stuff with my family, that includes stuff with, religion and politics. And religion was a huge part of my life until I was about 18 years old,
Mm.
when I moved out. um, and I have nothing against religion at all, but I definitely I was ready to branch out and kind of understand a little bit more outside of that
Yeah.
at that time. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of what other things I've been writing about. I'd say the conditioning is another thing that we
Mm,
are often conditioned to think or behave certain ways that are
yeah.
contradictory to how, like, to what's natural or what's healthy. And so I think that that's another thing that I've been needing to talk about in my own music, just so that I understand what I think or believe about that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you know, because you grow up and you see people that are older than you, like they got everything figured out, and you get older and you're like, oh, okay, nobody knows what they're doing.
How true that is. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, because it's like we all assume that by a certain age we have to have something done, or
hmm,
um versus now it just doesn't, it really doesn't matter. Like you are your own timing of your
yeah,
life. Like there's no such thing as a deadline. And
yeah,
so yeah.
absolutely.
When do you expect to release it?
Um, I don't even know. I have, oh boy. So since that last album
Mhm.
that I released in, I'm assuming 2018, um, before then I had two albums worth of songs that I wanted to record outside of that album. And so now I'm going back for the past year or so. I've been redoing them completely and
Mm,
remixing and re-engineering, because they all have a similar vibe, not to that the thing that I released, but they all have their own kind of sound that makes them cohesive,
yeah.
pretty much just because of where I was at in my skill and ability,
Mhm.
or restrictions. And so going back through and being like, okay, this is all cohesive and it all makes sense. They're all similar topics. Um, I'm I'm debating on putting some of those albums out, but since then I've written a bunch of I consider them Randy Newman style singer-songwriter songs.
Yeah.
I'm like an unbelievably huge fan of Randy Newman. His
Really?
sarcasm is just like top notch. His social commentary is phenomenal, and his way with
Yeah.
words, his love songs even are just like, dude, how can you make me cry by saying like 15, 20 words? Like, it's such a
Mm,
short song and you've just made it that emotive just because of what you're playing on piano and like how he sings those
yeah.
words, you know. um so I for a couple years I just like dissected all of his music all the time. Anywhere I was going, I was listening to a Randy Newman album. Um, and I'd say that a lot of the stuff that I most likely release soon would be that kind of stuff, because I'd just be able
Mm,
to track it by myself in the
yeah.
studio. Got a beautiful piano there that I'm just dying to record songs on. I've engineered other people using it, but I go in
Uh,
and play every single day. One of these days I'll record on it once I
you
have time.
should. You got
Yeah.
to. Life is
Yeah.
short. You should
It
do it.
is. It definitely is. It goes by fast too. Um, yeah, so I think that that would be what I release next. Would just be more of the kind of the storytelling stuff, the introspective singer-songwriter things, and a lot of those songs will be in the little Dropbox or Google Drive folder I'll send you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm like super stoked to hear it.
I'm nervous.
No, don't be nervous. I'm a very like, how do I to me music has been very important to me growing up, so my taste is very diverse. But yeah, the last question I have for you is, if anyone is listening out there that has struggled with what you have been through, or resonates with your story, what would be the advice that you give them?
um that is a great question. I would say, one, I would definitely, if you're able to, like, therapy, there are people that are affordable. Therapy can be incredibly beneficial for uh, getting a better understanding with the way that you work personally, because we can be pretty, uh, I don't know, dismissive of things that we don't want to acknowledge.
Mm.
And I think that talking to somebody, whether it's a therapist or somebody that you trust or respect, I'd say that it's important to have people that you're able to have like deep and meaningful conversations while also still being honest and getting honesty back. I think that
Yeah.
having, a mutually respectable relationship with somebody in some form, to where you can be open and honest about the way that you're feeling, because even just expressing it is, it can, it can change everything. Like it really does kind of, one, it puts things in perspective, but it also allows you to understand, what's happening the next time, like you feel that way, because it's not just your own opinion on it. You've now, had this conversation with somebody else that it's either validating your feelings or giving you another perspective to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we get so stuck in the individualist mentality of we need to be strong and confident without anybody else's help. I need to be, a brick wall for other people.
Yeah.
Like I need to be stable. And it's not always the healthiest thing for you. You're for yourself. Um, yeah. So just biggest thing would be find people that you trust and that you love, care about, and that you're able to be honest about. And don't let your whole life be work if you can avoid that. I know that it's important to work as much as you possibly can in order to get by,
Mhm.
cost of living, which is the stupidest phrase, it costs to live. um, uh, but yeah, I would say that making sure that you find time to do things that you enjoy, find time for things that you are passionate about, find time for like looking into new ideas or reading articles or books, or find some sort of hobby outside of uh, just the music. Because if
Mm.
you're working in music and your hobby is music, then that can get very tiresome very quickly.
That's
So
true.
if you are in the same position that I was in, I would definitely recommend. You know, yeah, my music is on Spotify and iTunes under Shammy, but it's spelled Chamois, Chamois, as some people say, or Chamois. I get a lot. But yeah, Shammy, name Chamois. And I'll eventually upload stuff, maybe. I also stream on Reddit every now and then. I haven't
Oh,
probably in about a month or two, I guess. Been crazy busy getting certain projects I'm working on for a few artists, getting those finished. But um, yeah, Connor for real, I think is my with two A's in real. Very classy. Have you seen Popstar, the movie?
no.
Oh, it's a Lonely Island movie with like Andy Samberg,
Oh,
and yeah,
yes. I just didn't know the name of it.
his name was Connor for real in set. So that became my like gamer tag and my Reddit like RPAN name. So yeah, I stream and I'll release music at some point, maybe.
Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate you coming on here and doing this. It was
absolutely.
amazing. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you have to go through the eye of the storm to see the clear horizon ahead. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next week.